Hello, I am Zahirul Alam. Welcome you all on Frankly Speaking. Our today's guest is Ms. Huadu, Country Director of Asian Development Bank ADB in Bangladesh. Huadu joined ADB in early 1994. She has worked in the fields of country strategy and program formulation, project processing, and project post-evaluation and quality review. Much of her service at ADB was spent on country programming and project processing in the developing member countries of South Asia, including Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. Who is a citizen of People's Republic of China. She holds a PhD in economics from the University of Sussex, United Kingdom. Welcome, Huadu, on Frankly Speaking.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, you have been working for ADB at head of mission, deputy head of mission in ADB office, Bangladesh, for 3 years, and then you have been working as head of mission for 1 year, more than 1 year. So, how do you find your living in Bangladesh?
Yes, that's right. I've been in Bangladesh for a little over 4 years in total, and I think I fit in very well. I like what I do here, and I get support from all around me, so that is a very good feeling. Here, the things impress me most are really the people of Bangladesh. As we just mentioned earlier, and they are hardworking, resilient, and they're dynamic. So they're also very warm and friendly, and I get along with them so well. So that is really something has made my last 4 years such a wonderful experience.
So how long you plan to stay in Bangladesh more?
By the contract, I get another 2 years.
Another 2 years?
Oh, yes.
That's a pretty long time. Yeah.
Time flies.
I mentioned that you are a national of China. So how do you describe the life and the pace of development in China at this moment?
Fast. And actually, Bangladesh development in the recent past also quite fast. You can see visible changes nearly on a daily basis.
I did visit Shanghai 2 years back and experienced a huge, tremendous construction work and developmental work in that city. So the pace of development in Bangladesh, can you compare with in which situation, which position we stand as a country, developing country? I
think if you compare Bangladesh to China, when I came here, probably we compare Bangladesh to China in the 1970s. And today, I would say we are comparing Bangladesh to the 1980s. And I'm sure in another 10 years, we'll be comparing to China the present, or even better than the present China.
Let's talk about the assistance of ADB and the relations between the Bangladesh and as a donor agency. Asian Development Bank has long been involved with Bangladesh in our development efforts. So how do you see the developmental relations between ADB and Bangladesh in the past and present?
Excellent relationship. Bangladesh joined ADB in 1973, and since then ADB has provided a concessional Asian Development Fund to Bangladesh for about $8 billion, plus $170 million technical assistance grants. So Bangladesh basically has over the years become one of the ADB's largest concessional fund recipients. So ADB assistance in the past actually focused on the following sectors like energy, which include gas and power, transport, like road including bridges, railway and ports. Also some key segments of the national road network. And in addition, we also provided quite a lot of support for rural infrastructure, mostly rural roads, rural markets, and education. Education is another sector together with urban health and agriculture and natural resources.
Do you think that the concessionary loan and assistance Bangladesh getting from ADB, it is being utilized in a expected and optimum level?
Largely.
So no complaint about that?
Well, maybe some specific cases like I think ADB is doing excellent job in energy, transport, education, urban health, and urban infrastructure, agriculture. In natural resources, not as good as in the other sectors, I would say.
How do you evaluate the state of Bangladesh economy at this moment?
I would say Bangladesh economy is doing really good, particularly in recent years. And the economic fundamentals are solid. GDP growth increasing faster than expected. In last year, fiscal year 2006, GDP growth is 6.7%. And the poverty incidence declined faster also than you have expected. According to the recent household income expenditure survey, I think over the last 5 years, poverty incidence, national poverty incidence declined by 9 percentage points. And the same was achieved over a 10-year period during 1990 to 2000.
Do you think is it feasible and realistic to achieve GDP growth rate by 7 to 8% by the end of this fiscal year?
Well, if the election, the forthcoming election, is not going to interrupt the development progress and the normal business activities, I would say Bangladesh would definitely achieving a growth rate much higher than the 6.7%.
You know that Bangladesh political parties and they are going to take part in the coming general election. So what is your expectation from this election?
I can see there's some kind of like confrontational politics there, but based on the past experience, and I'm confident the country will be able to have a peaceful election, and the transfer of the it will be able to transfer to the elected government very smoothly.
Is there any problem? Would have any problem if the election will be in chaos or any kind of uncertainty relating to elections? Would you relate your developmental assistance to the Bangladesh in this field?
We actually planned our assistance taking into account the election period. So, for instance, major reform measures are being taken, and during this period, largely we are trying to implement the projects. So, but in the long run, and we don't expect any adverse impact on the development progress, the election.
What is the state of reforms in economic sectors?
State of reforms, I must say, it's progressing. In spite of this forthcoming election, as your nation is preparing for the general election in January 2007, but I observe major structural sector reforms is ongoing. For instance, despite the current power crisis and also good progress in the power sector, the unbundled power utilities, for instance, they're performing really well, like DESCO, PGCB. And in railway sector, the government has just embarked on a major program to overhaul Bangladesh railway to improve this railway efficiency and capacity. And like Bangladesh, a country with a high population density, vulnerability to floods, and this kind of like long distance passenger traffic or bulk freight traffic or container movement, you really have to rely on railway. And come to other sectors like the banking sector, the planned privatization of Rupali Bank is also ongoing. And the recently, government also takes some measures to adjust the fuel prices, bring it closer to cost. And this is another courageous political decision government has made. And that will really significantly reduce the budgetary burden on the government resulting from these subsidies to the energy sector, and they would also help with the sustainable development of the sector. So education sector also reform going on. So by and large, I think in spite of the forthcoming election and reforms all going on.
Do you think the Bangladesh has done enough in reforms in microeconomic fields?
You can always, you can say there's good progress, but not always not enough. I just cite one example, the reforming the port sector really need to be expedited to improve the efficiency, particularly the Chittagong port. Efficiently run Chittagong port should help the country to unlock its potential to serve as this sub-regional transshipment hub and also the region's gateway to global markets. So there's a major work needed there.
Well, you know, the government, present government is at its fag end. And the ADB has long been involved with Bangladesh government and you're working still. So we shall talk on Bangladesh's position on power, infrastructure, education and women empowerment and many other issues. Our today's guest is Huadu, Country Director of Asian Development Bank in Bangladesh. Well, I was telling about that the present government is going to complete its tenure. And on several occasions, you have expressed your frustration, your concern, your disappointment about the performance of power sector, especially power sector. So how do you look at this problem? The situation has become acute at this moment. So your observation about that?
I didn't realize you see me as a pessimistic group. One.
No,
actually,
not pessimistic, but I want your observation about that only.
Yeah, okay. The power sector. I think, well, if you want my very frank opinion, I feel despite the current power crisis, but the power sector general has made good progress compared to where it started. For instance, I mentioned earlier the unbundled power utilities. I think they're performing really well. And like DESCO I mentioned and PGCB, and they have done a great deal in reducing system loss and also to improve service quality and reliability under the improved financial management. I must say, in the past, very much focused, like the development assistance of ADB, focused very much on peaking power plant, transmission and distribution. I think other development partners' support also largely focused on this distribution particularly. But now we realized the generation is really an area that is really lacking. Because at that time, it is expected the baseload generation, and they will come from the private sector investment. It's an area they will be able to attract private sector investment. For instance, ADB supported the Meghanagat 1 through our private sector window. But unfortunately, Meghanagat 2, 3, or the Sirajganj and those private sector power plants just didn't come up on time. So be it a governance issue or economic issue, and this is the area we need to really carefully review and to urgently address the current power crisis. But I mentioned, as far as the transmission is concerned, for instance, by end of next year, I would say, when the Western Zone transmission network is completed, and the country should have the transmission capacity to meet the planned demand for the next 15 years. So that is the area is doing really good, and distribution is not bad either. It's only the base load generation, and they need to come up.
Yeah, you just mentioned about the Meghanagat and Sirajganj power plant. A few months back in a roundtable discussions on power sector reform, you said that the private sector potential to respond to the need has not been fully harnessed. It is also unfortunate, you said, that due to the lack of transparency in the bidding process, ADB was unable to support initiative to set up private sector power plants at Meghanagat and Sirajganj, which could have added substantial generation capacity. So why you couldn't establish that kind of power plant in Meghanagat and Sirajganj? What was the bottlenecks there?
You done the homework, and as I mentioned on the other occasion, it is indeed when for ADB to support, and we emphasize a good, transparent bidding process and good governance. So when the process is not meeting the standard, even the government standard, I mean the government standard, so we cannot really finance. So that is what I mentioned, be it a governance issue or economic issue, and we need to address this area.
So do you think that the what is the problem lies, real core problem lies, is it want of investment, private sector interest in investing power sector, or lack of policy matters, lack of supporting the issues to meet the growing demand of the power?
It is a matter of getting things done and making the decision, and to get the private sector in the due diligence, due process. So that is really what is most important. I must say ADB, together with the other development partners, are very much ready to support again, and once this process is done in a transparent manner, follow the government's own guidelines to attract private sector investment in this sector.
So tell me in a very clear-cut way that how Bangladesh can get over this difficulty. Bangladesh is in great difficulty with power sector, some no doubt. How they can get over it?
Well, they certainly need to put the national interest first and try to keep free from influence of certain quarters and make the decision on a timely basis, economic decision. And so to get this major power plant done. So that is what you really need.
You know that to meet some developmental challenge, foreign direct investment is needed very much. So what is the condition of in your assessment, the prevailing investment situation in Bangladesh? Are you impressed with this, the climate, the atmosphere? Is it conducive, congenial for the foreign direct investment or any other joint investment from abroad?
A lot of good things, like starting a business in Bangladesh, I think compare quite favorably with the comparator countries. But I would say there's two things, there's maybe several things, but two things I feel is critically important. And one is infrastructure, and one is quality education. So a private sector or business would not want to establish anywhere when you don't have the sufficient infrastructure or a good kind of like a human stock to start with. In Bangladesh, for instance, the power sector alone, you would need like $15 billion over the next 2 decades. The same investment is needed in other sectors like railway, ports, roads, and urban infrastructure, urban transport particularly, and water supply and sanitations. So without the accelerated development infrastructure, and it is very difficult to attract private sector business into Bangladesh. And quality education, like in today's knowledge-based, like competitive world, and if you don't have like the sufficient human capital in the country, it is very difficult to compete globally. So quality education at all levels, like primary, secondary, higher education, skills development, all needed to boost up and to develop the human capital, and also to further transform the human capital into business capital to serve the needs.
So are you extending your hand in ensuring quality education in Bangladesh?
Education is a sector ADB has been focusing on over the past decades, and we are actively supporting primary education, secondary education, skills development, non-formal education.
PEDP, I think.
Yes,
PEDP2 and SESIP, the other area of cooperation.
Yeah, I mentioned PEDP2. That is a major program by the government, or flagship program by the government. It cost $1.8 billion. 2/3 come from government financing and another third from development partners. ADB is the lead external agency coordinating assistance from another 10 development partners. So this program is basically focused on quality primary education, inclusive education as well.
Before ending, you mentioned very beginning that Bangladesh's people impressed you very much.
Mm-mm.
What are the other things impressed you in Bangladesh?
Well, Bangladesh's people are very friendly, and they are very open-minded. And they Well, the culture and the country. I traveled extensively in country, in Bangladesh, like down south to Sundarban the rural areas, and Cox's Bazar, and north to Sri Mango, the tea plantation.
A huge experience.
Yeah, it is just a country full of culture and richness, and it is a wonderful country and wonderful people.
Well, thank you very much. But tell about something, your family life, your life in China.
My family life, actually, I have a small size family, and I live here with my son.
He's living with you in Bangladesh?
Oh, yes, yes.
Oh,
he's 10 years old, in grade 5. I think he fits equally well like I do, and he has a lot of friends here. Bangladesh has a large international community, and Dhaka, you see a lot of kids from all over the world. And he made a lot of friends, also friends from the local communities. So I think he's very much part of the culture and a part of the people already.
Oh, thank you very much, Huadu, for joining us on Frankly Speaking.
Thank you very much.